Thank you all very much. So what I want to say is that this forum follows upon something that we did a month and a half or so ago in Tokyo, in which we first raised the question of what is global citizenship and why does it matter? And we got in response quite a few interesting comments back, both praising the sort of concept of global citizenship, but also, quite frankly, pushing back on it as consumerist, as neoliberal, as ignoring what it means when people do, as we heard in the last session, hate each other. How does global citizenship serve as some kind of panacea to that? So this is going to be a building off of some of the sort of ways we have tried to confine that topic into something rather more pragmatic, practical, and perhaps a little less sort of idealistic. So before we start, I want to introduce Melina Neophytou. Yes. And she will talk to us a little bit about the background to this. Go ahead.
I hope this, okay, it's working. Hi, everyone. My name is Melina Neophytou. I am an academic coordinator at IAFOR. And I've been working very closely with Professor Hall in designing this forum discussions. So you might be asking yourselves, what are we doing here? What is the forum? Well, forums are in general a platform that offers the opportunity to share and discuss ideas, ask questions, and brainstorm solutions on important matters. So what we want to do and what we felt the need to do is to listen to the voices on the ground. There is a lot of decision making going on that doesn't really consider what the people in their everyday lives are experiencing and their insights to very important issues. So in February, we did a survey and we asked you, our IAFO community, to tell us what you think the emerging trends are in your respective fields of expertise and what should be discussed more. And we did the survey because we felt that institutions are largely beginning to fail in representing us. And these were the results. And as Professor Boddington previously summarized as the key themes that IAFOR is probably going to move towards, there were 4 main thematics. One was AI and technology, the other one human intelligence and humanity, which includes empathy, trust, respecting each other. The other one was global citizenship and peace education, and the last one, leadership. And so in May, in Tokyo, we started with what we thought is an overarching theme that encompasses all of this together, which is global citizenship. And because it was the first one, we very simply we asked very simple questions. We asked delegates to answer, what is global citizenship? How do you exercise it responsibly? What are the limitations? And what do you do in your classrooms to foster a global identity in your students? So there were a lot of different opinions, but 2 really stood out. And this one has a lot to do with what the panel just touched upon. And this delegate from the Netherlands said, I've been developing global citizenship programs for years now. It is becoming such an overused concept. It is what I call global citizenship washing, like greenwashing, because many programs are developed for the sake of labeling global citizenship and SDGs. We did surveys and students replied, oh, I just finished the module. I'm done, check, I did my part of sustainability. Students, mostly in more developed countries, claim that global issues are so far away from their experience that for them it's like, if it doesn't bother me, why should I care? This is a common trend in Europe. And another one said, perhaps this is a bit controversial, but I think global citizenship is not a good way to start this conversation. The term global citizenship can be quite off-putting to a lot of people. Teaching from a phenomenon-based approach or from the perspective of the individual issues over time has the effect of creating a sense of global citizenship, even if we don't name it as such. So I think global citizenship as a concept is best reserved for academics outside of the actual practitioner side of things. So with these two quotes as a provocation, today we want to discuss ethics and care. How do we get people to care?
Okay, so I think we're ready to move to icebreakers. And so this is going to start the interactive part of this. This is actually something that you need to talk among yourselves. So find someone next to you, preferably someone you don't know. So maybe, yes, these are husband-wife teams. They don't count. You should turn around and talk to someone behind you. Just to talk about this concept of our experience of otherness and others, especially around migration and refugees, etc., because that is so much a part of what we've been talking about in the last panel and also over the course of the next couple of days. So, have you ever personally been affected by conflict, war, or crisis? Have you traveled to a country that has been experienced a war, conflict, or natural crisis? Do you have a surprising story with a refugee or migrant whom you met? Do you have a personal unpleasant experience, because that is also the reality of life, with a refugee or migrant whom you've met? And have you ever participated in a protest? You don't have to ask all of these things, but talk to someone unlike yourself and share something, because this, again, IAFOR is about meeting people who are different from you. And then I'm going to ask a couple of people maybe to share some of their answers to this. So please, talk for 5 minutes. Okay, why don't let's share some of what we've been talking about with the larger group. And perhaps in your conversation, where I hope this took you, is as you were relating these stories of conflict, crisis, otherness, migration, protest, etc., positive or negative, how this, in fact, allows you to say something about the challenges of global citizenship or a global consciousness, or interacting with those unlike ourselves, which obviously is at the root of so much conflict and intolerance in the world. So Matthew has his microphone. So who would like to give us a few comments or observations on this topic of otherness, difference, and intercultural interaction at a time when, again, so much can lead to violence or not?
Hi, I just want to say I'm from South Africa, and I think as a country we have so many different cultures, and sometimes it's difficult to engage with people who are different from yourselves. But I think although it's difficult, it's really important. And traveling to other countries where it's more just a singular culture, I sometimes miss that, which we have in South Africa, where it's more different cultures. But it is difficult. So, yeah, how can I say? Sometimes I feel maybe it's easier to just immigrate to Europe where everything works. But I think in a country like South Africa, we also have the opportunity to make a big change and really help through education to help others.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments on, yes, over here? Whoop, Matthew, over here.
Hi, I'm from India. I'm Dr. Sherbani. So, India has this multicultural, multi-religious, multilinguistic, multi-ethnic. It's a very difficult kind of history we have. And frictions at different levels. So it's not only the colonizers. If we keep pointing our fingers only at the colonizers and the colonial history, that would not be enough, because the frictions are still on. We are at it, trying to resolve the frictions at different levels. And the otherness is happening at the localized levels, at the regional levels, because people kind of feel alienated in terms of different religions, the different interfaces we have, the different layers we have in terms of religions, in terms of different states and regions we have. So there are so many layers and nuances, and it's very difficult to envision, an Indian in terms of, we have one nation, but then it's so layered that it's difficult to put the puzzle together. It's a lot of hard work, and it needs a lot of empathy. That's one word I was looking at when you were saying a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding. Trying to know is another word I just heard. It's ringing in my ears. Trying to know, making an attempt to know others. Sometimes it's a privilege to not know others, I think. And even the word other is very problematic. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope I could get across what I was trying to say.
You did. You did beautifully. Thank you. And I think
Thank you so much.
it is very true that when we're talking about global citizenship, sometimes we don't even have people exercising citizenship responsibly at the more local level, at the national level or whatever. But yes, comment, please.
Hello, my name is Sneha. I'm also from India. I would like to add something to what the previous speaker spoke. In India, it's not just about the religion or the class, but it's also about caste system that we have. I myself belong from an indigenous community who are very minority in India. We have more than 700 plus communities. So it's also about the power dynamics of the marginalized community that's there in India. Those are invisibilized in the
Yes,
mainstream.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One more comment right there, and then we'll move on to our next.
Hi, something got stuck in my head when you were talking about last year conference. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, that a lady said that the students don't care, and you post something like how can we make care the students, right? It came to my mind Reggio Emilia approach. They start with very little kids, very young kids, to make them understand who they are, where they come from, and they talk. I remember I asked them, but what about global citizenship? They say no, this is too much for them. We need to start learning who we are, where we came from, and then jump, right? Because if we don't understand these two questions, we will not be able to understand other, right? So when we start, sorry, do you want to say something? No. In my class, I teach very young kids, 3 years old, and this is a mirror of the society, right? When the kids, you can see the kids for example, in Bangladesh, I was working in Bangladesh. I show them pictures of other kids of the north of Bangladesh, and they were saying that they were from another country. And that was like very important for me as a teacher to understand that my students were living in a bubble and they don't even understand where they came from. So that is the thing that I'm going to present in 2 days. How I try to connect these kids, my students from Dhaka, from the bubble, to other kids from the north. Same country, different kids.
Thank you very much. I guess one last step there. There's behind the post. Go up to the post, look to the right.
Thank you. I'm from South Africa as well. When you talk about the issue of peace, it takes you to look at the internal politics of a country. Want to make a practical example here. A country that has, for years, been handicapped by a host of socio-political impediments, sometimes a less stimulating environment, ignorance and subject poverty. And at some point, then you end up looking for some kind of a balance of power, especially from those who have been in power for years, suppressing those who do not have a voice. So now, when we talk about the issue of peace, we should also be looking at the issue of power imbalance, that discourse as well, because it does not then favor everyone, because we are not on the same equal footing. That's what I wanted to put.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. So here's the time. Pull out your phone, and scan the QR code. We're going to do this. Will lead to a word cloud. So we'll take just a minute, and we'll start seeing. Melina, are we going to start seeing it in real time as things pop up, or is it going to be?
If technology permits.
Oh, okay. Well, pray to the technology gods. Okay, we have some people who are very optimistic and some people who are very pessimistic in here. So, or maybe realistic is the better term. Reflect on some of these. What do you see as you look up here? What are your comments? What's your feedback? Some people see this as I saw Eurotopia jumping up in there. Unbelongingness jumping up there, privilege being a complicating factor. Anyone brave enough to explain what you typed in and why?
Hi. So, I thought that was very interesting to see the multiple meanings of global citizenship. So I did actually typed in both words that are actually, one of them is quite positive and the other one is kind of like a bit critical, because I did type in privilege as well. So I mean, I also recognize my own privilege because I used to be an international school student, like coming from Thailand, but at the same time, it does need a lot of privilege, it does need a lot of money and the ability to also even learn like your second language, English as a second language, to become a global citizen, because that's how you get connected with other people. That's how you communicate. So that's why I put the word privilege there. So, I mean, on the one hand, it does sound kind of critical, but also I can see it as my own privilege of being a global citizen in that sense. So yeah, it's kind of, for me, it's I'm quite ambivalent about the term, but that's my reflection. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Up here as well.
Hi. I actually, maybe it's about where you're from. Whether it's a positive or a negative comment or an idea of what a global citizenship is. In days where we have more technology and more money is given by this state in terms of border controls and the technology of border control and fingerprinting and visa, then everything is getting more difficult to actually travel around the world is getting difficult for some people, but not for others, of course. So maybe it's divided in that sense into two poles. I'm from Istanbul, and it is really, really difficult right now to get a EU visa, Schengen visa. That's why we always come here, because it's always easier to get a visa to the UK, which is fascinating and brilliant. So, and it all depends on not about us, but it's about state and the government's policies. Right. So, I actually, I also want to make another point in terms of the curriculum and how education is important in terms of peace. What if that curriculum is not about critical thinking, but more about state propaganda and more conservative? And if the Ministry of Education is actually forcing certain curriculums, how are we going to get that? And hasn't that failed us from over and over the years with the wars and everything going on for centuries? How are we going to rely on education?
That is an excellent question. Excellent. Yes, back here. There are two more, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My word is actually open-mindedness, because we as individuals are more valuable if we are open-minded and if we are different. The more different we are from each other, the more valuable we are as individuals. And open-mindedness leads to peace. And global citizenship is nothing more than, for me at least, peace and open-minded, being open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you. I typed accepting rightful coexistence in the society. By that I mean accepting that I have the right to live, not just live anywhere, even if I am an outsider, even if I am come from a diverse background or from a different background, I have the right to live and live as one of you. So accepting that idea, I think, is global citizenship for me.
Thank you. There's one individual up there, off to my right, and in the second row, and then we'll move on because we have lots of other word clouds to play with.
Yeah, I'm from Nigeria. My first word was actually the first word I saw, globalization, so which I picked. But I'm going to say that I'm a doctor of counseling and I'm a practicing counselor, so I'm going to talk from that perspective that a common mediator to this globalization is having a mediator, and I think is missing in our educational system uh, in every level, and there seems to be absence of life skills training that teaches empathy, love, respect, openness, all these words. And if this exists and people are being taught regularly, regardless of whatever course or education they might be going through, if there's this common mediator that mediates, whatever conflict that comes up every day, I think it's going to be easier for people to be open-minded, and then globalization or global citizenship will be easier. Thank you.
And maybe, yes, the woman two doors down.
I looked at the concept of global citizenship, and this is my question. Because if we talk about global citizenship, it comes with assuming some characteristics that defines what global citizenship means. And that becomes very important because what I know so far, like the guy from the South Africa talked about, does the characteristics that define global citizenship becomes the characteristics of those who are more powerful, who have always had the voice, who have always had the rights. Because as we all know, for a very long time, there's that dichotomy about whose voice is the loudest, who has the power, who are the privileged. Because then, again, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where the characteristics of certain people again becomes what is used to define global citizenship. So it becomes a perspective. Whose perspective? So if we talk about global citizenship, we have to respect individual identities. We have to respect cultural capital that every individual brings from their cultural background. And that means it's not going to be about the loud voice that had always perpetuated in the world where a certain cultural perspective had always defined the standard. So how are we supposed to solve that problem? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Okay, and this is just a yes, no, it's complicated question. Considering people's everyday lives on the ground, some argue there is a disconnect between institutions with their lofty aspirations and citizens with practical demands. Is this true, in your opinion? I think that's a great question, because I think in the context of a conference like this, I think we may want to focus on whether we connected with education, whether it's universities, secondary schools, primary schools, whether our aspirations around something like global empathy, even if we don't want to call it citizenship, or understanding, or sort of the ability to react and act with care and with ethics with each other, whether this in some ways runs into the what we've also heard in here before, the actual material lives of people who need access to food, water, a whole host of other necessaries, where these sort of big ideas may or may not have relevance in their lives. And I think maybe 2 people said no. But what are your thoughts on this? I mean, in other words, are we, and let's turn this up, into conversation, as we talk about these concepts at a conference like this, are we actually living up here somewhere in the stratosphere and not on the level where people are actually living their daily lives? What are your thoughts? We're living in the cloud. So, well, if we are in the cloud, then how do we get out of the cloud? My help. Oh, okay. Well, that's access to education. I mean, that is something that we were saying very much before. There's a hand over there. You were going to say? Let's wait till the microphone, because there are people online who will want to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a real onus on institutions to work very hard to kind of push access further. I mean, there's lots of talk about hard to reach communities, but actually I think it's hard to access institutions. And I think that framing of thought and reversing that of people aren't hard to reach, the institutions are hard to access, is kind of the root cause of how do we make these institutions easier to access. And I think in a way, presuming that that people don't want to access them in the first instance is kind of like, you need to kind of break that down, and you need to meet people where they are and realize that there's a process before the process of making those people, whoever they are, whoever those hard to reach people are, comfortable to engage, and continuously, like evolution, continuously looking for new ways to increase engagement. I think the institutions of universities are such echo chambers and rooted in the hypothetical, sometimes even when in practice, that I think it's a more intersectional layer of local governments, of like local councils. I say that because I'm from one. Local councils, how people are actually implementing and caring or not caring for their communities, and having that interdisciplinary approach between institutions as well, that are working in different disciplines.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. He wants to elaborate on his. Yes. It's all somehow my responsibility to change this. Yes.
Thank you. I think it is political will. The mismatch comes from the absenteeism of political will. If there is a political will in any nation, in any country, then the institute will match with our opinion. Otherwise, we are talking somewhere and they obey the regime in different ways. How to solve the problem? This is a question now. So to solve this problem, you have to change the regime. That's the only way. There is no other way. Thank you.
That is a call to revolution. Yes. Thank you. Anyone? Other comments? Yes, there's a woman in middle upper tier.
Okay, so thank you. So I think that now the internationalization policy becomes so sexy, and then every university wants to do it. But then in reality, that, for example, the use of language in a country, for example, that do not use English as the first language, and then they say that they have internationalization policy, but then when it comes to the language, they resist to use their own language, so that those who come from other countries become more outsiders. So that needs to change, even though it's not revolutionary for the countries, maybe.
If you'd pass it right behind you. Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Chinoy. So I would like to talk a bit on the educational system in most countries. For example, I'm from Nigeria, right? So there's a particular country I so admire their educational system. That's Japan. Okay. So in Japan, you notice that when they get to teach students or pupils, they teach them humanity, enhance their skills, which further helps them in the future. Right. So I feel like we don't match things we teach in schools with real life situations. Okay. So we can't come now in, let me say, a certain country, and then you're teaching students how to. There's a certain subject called abacus. Do you know abacus here? Yeah, so you don't teach abacus, and then when we come to the real world, we're not making use of abacus. Okay, so I believe that the best things to do is to change the educational system in most countries, instill humanity, instill improving skills in these little children when the pupils come to school. Allow them while away their time, fixing things, matching boxes, and don't just sit them down teaching them 1 plus 1, because it wouldn't really improve their humane self. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll. Joe's nodding his head over there, living in Japan. I will push back on that just a bit, though, because my husband's Japanese, and I go to Japan quite a bit. The Japanese educational system is superb, but it does not necessarily teach Japanese kids to love difference, because it is a very, very ethnocentric culture, which again, I love Japan, absolutely love it. But I'm not exactly sure that all Japanese kids are learning to be global citizens. Yep. Oh, there was a hand. Yes, right.
I am Fatih, and I'm coming from Turkey. It might be true that there might be a mismatch between the institutions and global what was the global citizenship. But actually, in addition to that, there is a mismatch between the hopes of learners, I mean young people, and the expectations of older generation. And for instance, learners I think they have already achieved global citizenship because of the social media. They are more sensitive and more open to global differences, other differences. But the older generation, their parents expect them to have the national identity, and this just augment the problem more. That's all. Thank you very much.
I absolutely hear you on that. Yeah, one here and then one down here, then we'll move on.
To quickly add that maybe the solution lies in making the learning more project oriented, taking them out on the field, because especially when we are talking about social sciences, we are talking about human subjects. We are working on marginalized sections of the society, and when we go there, when I have been there on the fields, I'm talking a lot about the indigenous people, the tribals, but you will get snubbed. And we have to live with that, because there is a kind of difficult history that they have faced. There is a kind of certain treatment that the people from the margins have faced. So when they see us as academics, as education is going there out there, they don't understand. Initially, they don't, and we might get snubbed, and we have to live with that discomfort. We have to. I think that's the kind of debt we are carrying, and we should be happy to. Navigate in that kind of troubled waters and not give up.
I absolutely
live with that discomfort.
That's a wonderful point. I absolutely agree with you, because
and not give up.
That's
it's frustrating, but we cannot give up.
Exactly. Right behind you, and then down here, and then we do have to move on.
Thank you. I think for me, as far as I know, global citizenship is depend on the why it is complicated, because every country has ideology, so different ideology. So that's why different with citizenship education. I think every country has same goals, like how to love to the homeland and then nationalism. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right down here, and then down here, and then.
Thank you. I'm from India, and we have a very old expression, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which translates to that this planet is one family, right? So basically, it's an expression that conveys global citizenship. But at the same time, like Sneha, I think she shared that we are culturally diverse. And we do see that being a single nation, still we are divided on so many lines. And we see a lot of mismatch in what we profess and what we practice. I personally feel that as a teacher, uh, we feel that we lack that agency through which we can bring about that change. So that belief is required that, yes, we are the agents of change and we should own that responsibility, and we can, bridge that gap that we see in practice and what we profess.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on. We have some other word clouds. Okay, so what are your thoughts on students not caring about global issues outside of the school or the campus? So jump right in. Okay, I think most people have participated. Who wants to jump in with why you typed what you typed? A lot of people seem to have typed neoliberalism. But there are also some others that I think are really, really interesting. They might be facing learning barriers. They have local problems rather than global problems. Who wants? Yeah, please.
Hi, I wrote capitalism, but I also wanted to write neoliberalism. I think because we exist in a neoliberal capitalistic framework, the society is more and more consumerist. In institutions, students are more inclined towards making money and joining the rat race. Not enough students want to participate in the social causes, I would say. Not enough people are going out to vote. And I don't, like ma'am said, that teachers want to make that change, but it's not in their hands because they also exist as a part of that framework. They're also working. And I am a lawyer and I work in the development sector. I am a social worker also. So I know that a lot of social workers, they want to make a change, but they also need to make money. They need to pay their rent. So I don't think students don't care. I think they just become a part of this cycle. So yeah.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, even among American students, many of whom are very privileged, there's one right here. There is a lot of anxiety about even just getting a job. I mean, they're not necessarily thinking about how they're going to change the world when they don't even know if they're going to be able to rent an apartment one day or live on their own or buy food. So that level of economic insecurity can drive a lot of lack of sympathy toward the plight of others because you're mostly worried about yourselves. Okay, please, and then up here. Yeah.
I typed in local issues. They have local problems. Again, maybe it depends on where you're living, but what you're saying is actually what I was about to say. I had students, and one day he came to my office and he said, you're the ones who were actually you were the lucky generation. And I asked him why, and he said, I cannot even begin to think about, becoming a global citizen and, going anywhere, traveling somewhere, getting an education somewhere. Whereas, professor, you had that chance, he told me. And yes, there's so many problems with so many local problems, major economic issues right now, from where I'm coming from, major political problems, and this extreme rise of fundamentalism and right-wing politics. And it's becoming more and more seen everywhere in the world, especially with what happened in Europe a few weeks ago with the elections and what's going to happen in the US. I'm just too scared to, even go there. But yes, there are all those issues that needs to be figured out first so that they can even start thinking about, global issues. And yet they still do, especially in terms of climate change and LGBTQ rights. There's this emerging protests in Turkey right now. Because it's probably one of the things that Erdogan hates. So, that's as a reaction to the government, of course.
Matthew, up the last row up there, the woman. Yes, she's had her hand up for a while. No, right in orange and black. Orange and black.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chinomso Dozie. I'm Nigerian, of course. And if looking at what you have here, students not caring about global issues outside school and campus, I'll say this I could liken to having to remove the speck in your eyes before getting to look at the law against someone else's. Coming from Nigeria, we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder. People find it difficult to eat. When you haven't found food to eat, what are you going to talk about? We walk into classes and then you see people living up in abject poverty on the one hand, and then some others living in affluence and then using taxpayers' money to fund their luxury. So there is a yawning gap. So whilst we're thinking about what to eat, some other people are thinking about flying private jets and going in yachts. So you can begin to imagine, whilst we're hungry, some of us are thinking about something else. So Nigeria, the second slide that came up here, the word that resonated with me as far as I'm Nigerian was wahala. And so Nigeria is in terrible crisis. And the only word that truly captures what happens there is wahala. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right up here, second row, and then a couple more.
Hello, everyone. I am Anupam, and I think I'm going to give a very different perspective to my previous speaker mentioned. Because when you talk about students, let's understand who these students are, and let's talk about the students from developed countries, privileged countries. What kind of these students are? These students are those who have big packs of money in their hand. They are influenced by social media. They don't make their own bed. They use ChatGPT for the assignments, and then when you have this kind of breed of students which are there, whose motive is to maybe influenced by society, or maybe influenced by the parental pressures, or maybe following the true American dream, if we call it so, and expecting them to be a global citizen. I think that we are going and expecting too far when they use those kinds of unethical means even for their own studies, and even they don't contribute in their family or with the parents. Asking for global citizenship and being understanding about global issues, I think we're asking for too much. I think we have to look at what kind of students we are raising. We have to address these issues, nip these issues right at the beginning before they become something else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Should we move on? Because I know we've got a couple of more things. How do we get students and people to care about the world? Now, Melina, is this just a general discussion question, or they're not supposed to type in anything, are they?
It is, because it's too hard to type into one word.
to write an essay on. So, thoughts on this? Okay, there's some turnaround, and then let's head back to the back because there's some people with hands up back there who've had their hands up.
I think students have to be a citizen in their own country, and because according to my teaching experience, students are hardly a citizen himself, let alone the global citizen. So I think students should have experience outside the campus and get into the community by service learning, and then they can have empathy about people who suffer from different local issues, and once they have the empathy, they can imagine other people suffer from different issues in this world. So I think the citizenship first and then global citizenship. That's my theory.
Okay, thank you very much. And then back there are a couple of hands up in the same row. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Mukwana from Uganda. How do we get students and people to care about the world? Probably my first thought, basing on my experience, is that the teacher education systems should change, because there's a likelihood that even the teachers themselves don't care about the world. And if the teachers don't, then how would the students do? So we should start from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Over there, and then I'm going to come across here. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say at our university, our focus is very much on social impact. And I think that's important so that students again know to use their privilege to do good instead of just harnessing it for yourself. So social impact is really important.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, I'm going to give you some exercise and come over here, back to the other side of the room.
Good afternoon. I'm Lina from South Africa. I would say, how do we get students and people to care about the world? Charity begins at home. In South Africa in the 90s, we used to have religious subject at schools, primary and high schools. We used to have in our times at the high schools, we used to have kids, youth that knew elder people, that know how to pray, that knows God, that do respect everyone, apply Ubuntu humanity everywhere you go. You see somebody struggling, you help. Today, the dominating countries that are so savage, promoting savage, they are dominating the world on social media and everywhere. Kids today, the religious subject has been removed in the 2000s. Kids today, when they see you struggling, they laugh. They're competing with who is more savage than the other. Daily on social media, everywhere you can see how disrespectful kids are, how ignorant kids today are. That's how the world has turned today. Thank you.
Over here, and then maybe down here. Yeah, please. Right there. Yeah. Yep, there. Yep.
Thank you. As you can see from the vibration and the sentiments that people share in this room, that some are quite kind of angry, I would say, when we talk about the topic, even us in this room. We are adults, we have more emotional control. But when we talk about our students, they don't have the emotional control. When you talk about the conflicts, when you talk about neoliberal system, the problem, they get more and more angry. And they become radical. They want to change the world tomorrow. So they be activists tomorrow without even understanding the problems at hand. So I think we need to be patient. We need to take slow steps, baby steps, kind of understanding the system, not necessarily the bigger political system. I think politics, everyone hates politics. So if you start from politics, you're going to be in trouble. So I think we kind of need to start, as the presenters, the panel said, some different pedagogical models where people could be influenced, the way how they think, how they act and behave, and be responsive to the needs of the society. So if we think about such pedagogies, I think people will eventually change. I think we can't expect it to happen tomorrow.
Thank you. A couple over here, and then we're getting close to needing to wrap up. Yeah.
My name is Cordelia Yates, and I am from United States. And I looked at this question carefully. How do we get students and people to care about the world? And my thought is this: we have to move away from the blame game. And I'm talking about this in terms of when we begin to look at it, if we want to change a mindset, we cannot change a mindset with accusatory tones or with a blame way of speaking. And I talk about this because I teach pre-service teachers in Morningside University. And part of the course that I teach is culture and ethics. And I am talking about this because we talk about the achievement gaps between the colored students and the white students. And I talk to the teachers, and many of them feel like I wasn't part of the history of segregation, so I feel like I'm being accused every time the society talks about this change, change, change. And that creates in any human being a defiant mind when you feel you're being accused of what you don't feel responsible about. So if we want to develop care in students about the world, it's having an open mind to have an open dialogue without stigmatizing any group of people and feeling like, you know what, you've all got it. I had a student where I say, I walked my way through school as a white student. I paid my school fees. She said, Dr. Yates, I worked 2-3 jobs. And so when people begin to talk about hunger, as a white student, I also experienced hunger and hardship because I paid my own school fees. So yes, we have to be able to appreciate that every single human being feels more appreciated without being accused, without stigmatization, without thinking you got it better than me. And so guess what? When we're talking about this, is about what you did. And that is the only way we can develop care in people, when we take away that accusatory tone and not really blame anybody. Thank you.
I love ending on that. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Well, listen, this has been, I hope, a productive session. At least we've heard a lot of different viewpoints that otherwise we might not have actually been able to share. So with that, I will turn this back over to Joe, the CEO, who will give us instructions. But thank you all, and see you here tomorrow.